Okay, corrections to the previous tier. The phrase anti when it comes to fanships did not originate from the Genshin Impact community. However, I feel like that's where it was popularized, and that's also where I came across it first. Hopeless Peaches goes by the pronouns he, him now, not she, her. Also, for reference, Peaches apparently verbally abused an autistic and disabled person for several hours, and that's why he was canceled very recently. It's a whole thing, and I'm gonna just walk away from that one. And one more thing, YouTuber Izzy's is pronounced Izzy. I'm sorry, I like her content, and consider how much weirdo art stuff she covers, she'll probably get plugged again. So I'll get it right next time. Oh, and also, this one's of significant note, but to clarify, a fujoshi is a woman that fetishizes gay men and homosexual relationships, not just a person who enjoys BL or boys' love stories. They're a little bit different, I guess. I'm still kind of whatever on that whole thing, you know? People are horny. Well, what are you gonna do? However, we'll be covering a reverse Fujoshi today. I also wanted to add this because I think it's a little funny. Sorry, I have a dark sense of humor, but apparently, according to this comment I'll put on screen, the main reason that Joe Cat left the internet was because someone sent him fetish art of his OC. Apparently, this chubby chaser was a racist, too.
Ugh, keep your fetish away from me!
Oh, and I also want to address a comment on the first tier about taxidermy. I'll put it on screen. I understand where this person is coming from, and maybe I should have articulated that entry a bit more and tried a bit more of an objective approach to it. It's just that I find art made out of dead animals just a bit odd is all. I mean, I still respect it as an art form, but I wouldn't do it myself, you know? Okay, hopefully when we get to tier 4, we won't need this many corrections. Alright, onward to the next layer. Jazza vs. ZHC. Okay, this one has a lot of lore around it. ZHC is a horrible art YouTuber, but a really good Mr. Beast clone YouTuber. Jazza is a well-known and revered art YouTuber that I'm sure literally everyone watching right now is familiar with. If not, how? He's one of the most subscribed to and longest running art YouTubers on the platform. So this entry is about a particularly interesting beef between these two. It's kind of an odd one, but one that I feel was a battle of good intentions, believe it or not. I know I covered a lot of art YouTuber drama last time, but this one is probably the last one in the entire Iceberg. So for context, let's start with ZHC. ZHC or Zach rose to prominence in the YouTube art community years ago and really got mainstream appeal when he started the customizing trend. Side note, I fucking hate the word customize. Just say you painted it, a-hole. Anyway, so his whole shtick was using extremely expensive art supplies and giving away a bunch of shit. You know, the Mr. Beast method if it was ever to be named. And yes, what works, fair enough. You know, I get it, you gotta hustle in this algorithm economy. However, the one thing that stood out in his shift to a Mr. Beastified art channel was just how disingenuous it felt. But you know, those big YouTubers that appeal to literal embryos, you know, are all disingenuous. To be perfectly honest, I don't hate the player, I just hate the game.
Oh my god, corny, lame, boo, tomato, I'm throwing tomatoes.
One of ZHC's major flaws was not properly crediting collaborators, some of which did the brunt of the work on various projects, not even a damn link in the description. Which, side note, all supplemental videos will be linked in the description. If you want a more in-depth look at these entries, I'll tell you which ones for this beef at the end of this segment, but moving on with this story, ZHC slowly morphed from an art YouTuber to a rich I must constantly show other people how much money I have type LA douche tuber. Serious Paul Brothers energy. So, Jazza decided to give the young man a stern talking to. Alright, here's where Jazza called ZHC out on this bullshit. Collaborators came forward, exposed that they weren't properly compensated, nor did they even get their channels linked in his descriptions at the very least, and, to top it all off, there were allegations of physical abuse of employees, and I don't mean being strict, I mean forcing people to do things that they physically weren't able to. For one of his videos, he forced a woman who has asthma to run a mile, and that's not cool, bro. Anyway, Jazza even had a call with ZHC about his bullshit. And honestly, Jazza is the last guy I think would get involved in something like this, so you know ZHC was in trouble. So ZHC did the bare minimum and added some links and altered some titles, you know. That's about it. ZHC is still making bad Mr. Beast clone content for embryos, and Jazza himself seems to be in a bit of a decline. Have you seen how bad his thumbnails are lately? Dude, you can't use a more interesting Canva template? What is this? What is this right wrong shit? Anyway, that's the beef, and probably the last one between art YouTubers, so now we're going to move on. But if you want a more detailed breakdown, I'll leave a link to a video by a YouTuber named Jamstio that breaks down the situation in under 10 minutes, as well as a link to Jazza's 2 ZHC videos. Andrew Dobson. Oh boy, this one is loaded. So Andrew Dobson is one of those guys that you could potentially make a documentary on, and one of my favorite newer YouTubers, MagicMush, did. Now, I'd say just go watch that, but I need to retain the viewer, so here's a general overview. Andrew Dobson is the definition of a soy boy, in short. He was so notorious that people that documented lolcows created the moniker Art Cow just for him. Alright, so let's start at the beginning. Fun fact, his name was actually Tom Preston, not Andrew Dobson. Why the change? I don't fucking know. Dobson was a raging Nintendo fanboy, the worst kind of fanboy. He also literally dressed like the Lightbringer. It's me, the Lightbringer. I'll link to that video of mine in the card. Anyway, this story is so extensive I actually reached out to the community to help me with an abridged version. While I don't mind longer format videos, and I'm assuming you don't either if you're watching this, it really is that deep. So here's the spark notes provided by viewer Uwu Edgelord. Great name. He got into a bunch of arguments online and made comics where he plays out his I should have said that scenario. He claimed anime made Disney go all CG and he couldn't get a job because of it. Something Treasure Planet, I think. I don't know. There's, of course, everyone's favorite, the infamous Power Girl incident. He was working a con, a cosplayer dressed up as Power Girl was taking a picture, and he was mad about it for some reason. So he proceeded to draw himself as his persona being a white knight for a scenario he made up in his head. This has since become an infamous meme. So, the big one is the fact that he's a raging male feminist. You know the type, Sarkeesian simps. He frequently made comics complaining about the sexualization of women and was an outspoken pro-LGBT activist. His Twitter was a sight to behold. Now, I don't really care all too much about a person's political beliefs, but it is relevant. He frequently drew lesbian couples more than gay men. Now, as I said in the previous tier, draw whatever the hell you want, unless you're Shadman. But when your antics online say, I'm super pro-LGBT and you heavily favor drawing lesbian couples, you're probably going to get called out on it. Also, remember what I said about him being anti-sexualization of women a few sentences back? Yeah, kind of weird how he preached that while simultaneously drawing this stuff. Me? I don't give a fuck. I know quite a bit of art I've drawn is a bit degen to say the least, but the difference is that I own it. Dobson was a hypocrite about it. And just like Toby's story from the previous tier, it's not so much your fetishes or your secret degenerate artworks, it's the hypocrisy that most people have a problem with. His fetishization of lesbians is also where the lesbian kick image came from. And then there was the exposure of the secret account, Caddy N. Not only did he fetishize lesbians, but he was also really into inflation. This was the final nail in the coffin. Oh yeah, and I didn't even mention the Big Ben tracing fiasco.
Andrew Dobson, professional artist, traces pictures of Big Ben, goes to sell them at conventions. 5 minutes in Photoshop, I hope you die on your way to MCM. On your way to MCM.
This rabbit hole is deep, so I'd recommend that MagicMush video, and stay tuned to this channel when I take a look at Dobson's comics eventually. Race swaps. Oh boy, we're getting a little bit spicy on this one. Okay, so, race swaps refer to times when legacy characters inexplicably have their races changed, usually from white to black. There are many examples, but it seems the people that commit these race swaps favor ginger erasure. Now, I don't care about the races of characters in works of fiction, but after seeing how frequently it's done, you gotta ask why, you know? And to use a phrase I don't like using, it's most likely woke pandering, you know. They attempt to be diverse and inclusive. A lot of these people that work on reboots of older franchises have this dumb idea that they need to update for a modern audience, but when it bombs, they blame said audience, the audience that doesn't exist. Now, I'm of the mind that adding more diverse characters is totally fine, but why not create new characters to add instead of turning Bruce Wayne here into a gay Asian teenager? Well, a common defense I see is that, well, it won't sell as well if we created new characters, so we need to woke-wash these legacy characters. Woke-wash, for lack of a better phrase. Yeah, that's kind of bullshit. People just can't write. Let's see, The Wire is one of the greatest TV shows ever made, 90% black cast. I remember loving the Static Shock cartoon when I was younger. Samurai Jack was a banger. Japanese character right there for you. Oh, which reminds me, anime is insanely popular these days and often feature a 100% Japanese cast. Have you guys ever seen the anime classic Revolutionary Girl Utena? It's weird as hell, but I honestly call it a work of art. It's also very, very, very gay. Okay? But it's amazing. I love it. Spawn is one of the most successful and longest running creator-owned superhero comics ever. Alien and Aliens are still some of the most revered films ever, and for good reasons, and those movies have a literal strong female lead, as cringe as that phrase sounds these days. X-Men is a pretty good example of woke stuff being good, although in that case I believe the better phrase than woke is probably socially conscious. I know, Stan Lee didn't want to write origin stories, but he went on record to say that he saw what was going on with the civil rights movement and implemented an allegory. I literally got into the Soul Calibur franchise because when I was 13 in the local Game Crazy to pick up my birthday game, I just thought Zas Lamel looked cool as hell on the cover. Yes, I am very old. So, no, you don't have to race swap legacy characters to add more diversity to your products. For the most part, just be a better writer. Take for instance the Velma Scooby-Doo reboot. People don't hate it because of the race swaps, they hate it because it sucks. This entry did have a little bit of subjectivity to it, you know, I know it's a little bit of a controversial subject matter, but for the most part I think race swaps are completely unnecessary and just kind of done to, like, you know, pander, and be like, hey look, it's cool now, we changed the race or the gender or the sexuality, we're so woke, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, come on. I don't know. What do you guys think about race swaps? You know, do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you think people would be better off just creating new characters? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. We're going to move on to the next entry. Outsider art. Outsider art generally refers to people creating art without any knowledge, background, or teachings in the traditional sense. Honestly, I just defer you to a documentary about it I found a while back if I can find it. Sorry, I can't remember the name offhand as I write the script, but maybe Editor John can put it on screen and link in the description. But I recall this documentary detailing people that were a bit, well, I guess neurodivergent is the best word? Yeah, I'd say autism, but some of these folks have more than autism. I will say I do think that documentary did have a tendency to focus on the more neurodivergent individuals and not just people that were self-taught, so do be prepared for a bit of bias if I can find the damn thing without remembering the name. There's a really good video by Atrocity Guide, who's an S-tier documentary style YouTuber, by the way, where she goes in depth about this one outsider artist that built a kingdom out of garbage. It's called The Throne of James Hampton. It's a really unique piece. There's also another video from Fredrik Knudsen. I saw that one comment that corrected my pronunciation about this guy, Henry Darger, who drew a really long illustrated novel with like these transgendered angels or whatever. I don't know, it's kind of neat.
I just think they're neat.
Anyway, outsider art is an iceberg of its own, honestly. It might be a good topic for a potential future video series in this style. I will say, though, this is an art channel and not an iceberg channel, but I'm not opposed to doing another one of these in the future. Gonna move along. Ancient alien nonsense. Ancient alien nonsense refers to the various conspiracies around many ancient artworks, particularly Egyptian artworks. The television show Ancient Aliens, which somehow has 20 fucking seasons, are you kidding me? This show popularized various theories the ancient civilizations were contacted by aliens and their artworks were evidence of that. Weirdly enough, it seems that only ancient civilizations inhabited by people with darker skin needed alien assistance to build things. Isn't that funny? Those aliens never stopped in Greece or Rome, apparently. Anyway, popular theorist and meme Giorgio A. Silcolas, what a name, is the reason people believe in this nonsense. Listen, if you look at ancient art from a long-ass time ago, people didn't understand stuff like perspective and light and shadow and all these fancy words we throw around in the art community today, but why? They were probably too busy growing crops and hunting food and trying to not fucking die. Not a lot of time left over to develop their art skills. As such, art they did make was probably not the Sistine fucking Chapel, you know? And misconstruing it as aliens is an eternal meme. Fun fact, when I was in school in one of my art history classes, the teacher showed an image of the stretched heads from Egypt, which most historians believe to be a bizarre and deadly fashion trend. Someone said, they look like aliens, as one would, and my teacher said, the A word is not allowed in here. Imagine being an art historian and constantly getting asked about ancient alien stuff. Anyway, this show is wacky, man, and the fact that it's still going 20 seasons later blows my mind. The Aaron Carter Incident. The Aaron Carter incident refers to one particularly notable instance of art theft. Aaron Carter was a pop singer who rose to prominence as a child star with his hit song I Want Candy. As often the case with many child stars, his adult life wasn't so glitzy and glamorous. His star faded, but he was still around. To tell you the truth, I'm not a celebrity historian, so I don't know all of the details, but I do know of one thing that ties back to the art world. He stole a piece from artist Jonas whatever that is, to put on his clothing line, and when he was called out for it, he acted like a child about it. Carter got sued, and the artist won. Win for the artist. How about that, huh? We won one, boys. Not so good for Carter's last bit of notoriety before his passing. Aaron Carter unfortunately passed away due to taking Xanax and huffing a gas called difluorothane and passing out in his bathtub. It's honestly quite tragic. He was only 34. You know, even if he acted childish during his legal battle, it's kind of a shame, you know? Rest in peace. Corporate art style. Corporate art style refers to an art style that is frequently used in the corporate world. That sentence doesn't make sense. Okay, it's that flat, blobby characters with random colors for skin tones that you see in a lot of corpo shit. This art style is officially referred to as corporate Memphis or Algeria. I argue that the Grubhub Perks Make You Boogie meme from a few years back is an evolution of that style into 3D. There's a good video by Solar Sands on corporate art style. But that's not why this entry is on this iceberg, because in truth the style called corporate Memphis is actually Globo Homo. Let's get our tinfoil hats on. Globo Homo is short for globalized homogenization. There's some conspiracy theories around it that say stuff like eventually the global elites will make everything look like this dull, lifeless, blobby sleep aid of a style. Despite its pleasant colors, its ubiquity is comparable to a dystopian hellscape. One day your individuality will collapse under the omnipresence of Globo Homo. Or something like that. I don't fucking know. It's just a shitty style that's in every single corporate thing ever these days. Anyway, this is the only time I'll ever tell you this, but this is a bad style and you shouldn't draw like it. John Wayne Gacy's art. John Wayne Gacy was one of America's most notorious serial killers, up there with the likes of Jeffrey Dahmer and the Zodiac Killer. One of his jobs was working as a clown, which earned him the serial killer nickname the Killer Clown. He was a disgusting excuse of a human being that R-worded and unalived, God I fucking hate YouTube, at least 33 young men in Chicago from 1976 to 1978. He was caught in December of 1978 and was sentenced to death in 1980 and put down via lethal injection in 1994. Now, you may realize he was jailed from 78 to 94, so other than standard prison stuff, what did he do with this time? Art, of course. He did a lot of human skulls and self-portraits in clown makeup. This painting on screen is probably his most famous one and even claimed to be haunted. Disgustingly enough, he was able to sell paintings while in prison, profiting off of them. Most likely the allure of it being tied to someone so infamous, which is probably why people buy Sonichu medallions. Don't do it, they're cursed. Anyway, these paintings were often very flat and lacked much in the lighting department. His style was very rudimentary and may even be considered Dadaist by how rough they were. A lot of his paintings sell for big bucks at auctions, but I believe that's the allure of a phenomenon called murderabilia, which, if you don't know, is defined as items related to horrific crimes and notorious killers that are auctioned off to weirdos that want to collect that stuff. Honestly, I just don't get it. Maybe you guys could tell me in the comments why someone would want to purchase this kind of thing. John Wayne Gacy was scum of the earth and was put down like the dog he was. His artwork is in the dark corner of the art world where we put things like Hitler paintings. While some may find the artwork aesthetically pleasing, the person who created it was so evil and horrific, most people don't even want to acknowledge it exists. If you want my thoughts on artworks by criminals, I'll link to an older video where I did exactly that. Loss. Loss refers to an infamous episode of a popular webcomic called Control-Alt-Delete. It's a silent chapter that depicts a man discovering his wife had a miscarriage. This is coming from a series that started out as a comedy gaming webcomic. I would go into more depth about this, but I have an entire series review of this infamous webcomic planned for the very next video, so make sure you subscribe. Loss has become one of those eternal memes up there with Doge and Pepe. It's always going to come back when you least expect it. The phrase, "is this a loss?" is often posted underneath any silent 4-panel comic because of just how much this particular episode permeated into the culture. Honestly, I'm quite interested to find how this came to be, but for now we're just going to move on to some weeb shit. Eroguro / 90s anime OVAs. Eroguro nonsensu is a Japanese phrase meaning erotic grotesque nonsense. As the name implies, it has a heavy focus on graphic violence and erotic content. Its origins are cited around 1920s to 1930s Japanese culture, and its first mainstream breakout is credited to writer Edogawa Rampo. The reason I added 90s anime OVAs to this entry is the fact that some OVAs, which means original video animation, the Western equivalent probably being miniseries, were just rife with Eroguro content. Anime like Angel Cop, Wicked City, Ninja Scroll, and Legend of the Overfiend are notorious for their intensely graphic violence and explicit sexual content. Thus, these fall under the category of Eroguro. The art style is still prevalent to this day, but it seems like anime toned it down to appeal to a more modern mainstream audience, which is pretty lame in my opinion. Like, come on, where your balls at, bro? There are quite a few illustrators working in this style, including Toshio Saiki, Suehiro Maruo, and my personal favorite Eroguro artist, Shintaro Kago. Once you get past the shock value of this style, you can appreciate some of the works of the top artists in this genre, not dissimilar to something like NSFW artists. Eroguro isn't a strictly Eastern style of illustration. All you need to do is punch in the term Eroguro into a DeviantArt search bar with the filter turned off, and you'll see shocking, graphically violent, and sexual artworks, although I wouldn't recommend it. Eroguro is often dismissed as edgelord shit, and sometimes, yeah, it is. But other times you can't help but appreciate the draftsmanship behind it. Oh boy, politics. Antoons. Remember what I said in the Jazza vs. ZHC entry that it was the last art YouTuber drama? Well, I guess I lied. Okay, so where do I even start with this guy? Ugh. This might be the longest entry on the Iceberg and will probably have the most comments with corrections in it. I look forward to getting a full picture from people that are a little bit more entrenched in the art commentary / storytime animator communities. Alright, but based on my research, here's a general overview of Antoons and his notable conflicts. Okay, so this guy is an animator and comic creator known for darker humor and conservative-leaning politics. As stated in the Dobson entry, I could care less about a person's political beliefs, but having said that, some of his comics might be seen as just a bit much. Whether you agree with them or not, I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments below. Now, his politics are not actually why he's on this list. Again, I don't care about that, and neither should you. The thing is that he's gotten into so many dumbass Twitter fights that researching this felt like an exercise in futility. A bottomless pit, if you will. It seems he toned it down these days, but his behavior is archived for all to see. The internet is forever. So, here's the highlights. Daft Pina, who was a bit of a rabbit hole himself, called him out on tracing some frames of his animations. Antoons admitted to it, and it was a whole thing, but that's pretty minor compared to the other stuff on this list. Puppy-chan is a whole other rabbit hole as well, and will be included in the bonus tier. Man, this community's a fucking disaster. Okay, they had some dispute. Puppy-chan was a minor. Antoons drew messed up drawings of her avatar or something. This is making my brain hurt. It was a whole thing. There was, I think they made up, but then, whatever. Aziz from New Zealand, see, I knew she was going to come up again, and I got it right this time, was the victim of false allegations perpetuated from Antoons. Which allegations? That she was a map. No, not that thing you look at to find out where you are. It's an acronym for a person with Biden energy. This was objectively false, and she even made a video debunking this. However, based on research on this beef, it seems she actually made the same false allegations about Antoons. What a mess. It seems they reconciled and just walked away after this chapter in the Antoons saga. I don't know, it's a whole thing. Look, there's so much more to various controversies of Antoons and his many disputes and Twitter fights. Honestly, I'm just kind of giving up on this entry because for everything I see against Antoons, I see something for Antoons. I just recommend typing Antoons drama into the search bar and watching all of the videos around it and formulating your own opinions. This is why, other than doing postmortems on certain dramas in this very Iceberg, which is the first and only time I'm doing it, I don't get involved in stuff like this. While I like to read a good old-fashioned Twitter fight, I do not engage, and neither should you. It's a waste of time that could be used for something more productive. Now, to be fair, some of Antoons' detractors did go after him because he's right-leaning and they were left-leaning, and I tried to sidestep politics mostly. Whether you're left-wing or right-wing, all that matters to me is chicken wings. Okay, believe in what you want, but try to hear out both sides on a matter and formulate your own opinions so you don't go off the deep end of either side. Not everything is so black and white when it comes to political issues. This entry made me lose brain cells, and to be honest, I'm glad I'm moving on from it. I'm sure this segment will be deemed controversial, I guess, so let's move on to something more advertiser-friendly. Racist cartoons. Oh, god damn it. Oh boy, alright, this tier is definitely checking off the controversial in the title of this series. Racist cartoons refer to old cartoons that were objectively racist. There are, of course, the infamous Censored 11. Cartoons that have been banned and sealed away for just how goddamn racist they are. Here's a list with a brief synopsis of each, more or less. Hitting the Trail to Hallelujah Land contains blackface and Uncle Tom's. Sunday Go to Meeting Time contains racial stereotypes. I mean, just look at it. Clean Pastures is another case of just look at it. Uncle Tom's Bungalow, I mean, that's the title. Need I say more? Jungle Jitters is yet another case of just look at it. Honestly, these are all really a case of just look at it as I research this topic further, but the rest of the list is as follows. The Isle of Pingo Pongo, All This and Rabbit Stew, Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs, Jesus Christ, okay, Tin Pan Alley Cats, Angel Puss, and Goldilocks and the Jiving Bear. These cartoons were so blatantly offensive and racist that they were banned in the 60s. The 60s. There's also Song of the South, which was actually an Oscar-winning film that was very, not cool to say the least. I mean, funnily enough, one of Disney's most famous songs, Zippity Doo Dah, is from this film. This film was released in the 40s. There is some debate around whether or not the film is actually racist. It's deemed to depict stereotypes of African American people, although many comments I've read on clips of it seem to not find the film as racist as its legacy preceding it. Look, I don't really know. Feel free to debate about it in the comments, but please keep it civil and respectful. The film has since never been released on home media. Those Censored 11, though, those are objectively more racist than a Klan meeting. It was a different time, but these are still some of the most notoriously racist animations ever made. Luckily, there has been progress since, but unfortunately, racism of all kinds is alive and well these days. If you want a more in-depth look at the Censored 11, I'd recommend a video by El Supersonic Q on it. And that concludes Tier 3 of the dark, weird, and controversial artist Iceberg. Thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. As always, if I made any mistakes or errors, please leave comments below and I'll add corrections at the start of the next installment. If you have suggestions for a future bonus/viewer submitted tier, please leave them below. I'll pan the Iceberg chart on screen now. The support for the channel lately has been wild, and I never thought I'd see this much growth. Like, really, it's insane. I sincerely thank you all from the bottom of my heart and really appreciate all the support and feedback. You guys are the best. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in Tier 4.